For 300 years, the galaxy had one rule: stay away from Earth. The humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human. But when the quarantine field finally failed, the galaxy was about to remember why they had been so terrified in the first place. The Galactic Council chamber hung in the void between stars, a monument to cooperation that had endured for 12,000 years. Its crystalline walls reflected the light of 1 billion distant suns, and within its halls, representatives from 400 species had gathered to discuss trade routes, territorial disputes, and the endless minutiae of maintaining peace across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. But today, the chamber was silent. Ambassador Krell'ix of the Voth hierarchy stood at the central podium, his 6 manipulator arms trembling despite his best efforts to maintain composure. The holographic display before him showed a sector of space that every species in the chamber knew intimately, though none had visited in 3 centuries. The Sol system, Earth, humanity's prison. The quarantine field has failed, Krell'ix announced, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into 1,000 languages simultaneously. After 317 standard years, the gravitational displacement barriers surrounding the Sol system have collapsed. Humanity is no longer contained. The silence shattered into chaos. Representatives leaped to their feet, appendages, and hovering platforms. The crystalline chorus of Arcturus rang like shattering glass. The methane breathers of Typhon 9 released clouds of colored gas that their translators rendered as screams of panic. Even the usually stoic titan forms of the obsidian reach shifted uneasily, their mountain-sized bodies creating tremors that rippled through the station's artificial gravity. High Counselor Verimuth, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, raised her luminescence to demand order. Silence. We knew this day might come. The question before us is not whether humanity has been freed, but what we intend to do about it. What we intend to do. The voice belonged to War Leader Thurn of the Kasadi Empire, his red scales darkening with aggression. We built that quarantine to protect the galaxy from the most dangerous species ever encountered. We should rebuild it immediately. Stronger this time, permanent. The quarantine took the combined resources of 60 species 20 years to construct, pointed out Scala Prime Elisa, her tentacles forming complex mathematical shapes in the air, and it was designed to be maintained by the humans themselves from the inside. They chose isolation. We simply ensured they had no choice but to keep that promise. To rebuild it now, against their will, would require what? Thurn interrupted. Resources, time. I watched the historical records, Scholar. I saw what happened during the contact wars. 12 species went extinct. 40 more were reduced to scattered populations. And you know the most terrifying part? Humanity won those wars by accident. They weren't even trying to conquer the galaxy. They were just defending themselves. Krell'ix watched the debate unfold with growing dread. He was old enough to remember the stories passed down from his great-grandmother, who had witnessed the final days of human expansion firsthand. The tales had haunted his childhood dreams. Humans who could survive in environments that would kill most species. Humans who treated vacuum exposure as a temporary inconvenience. Humans who had weaponized everything from asteroids to solar radiation, to the very fabric of spacetime itself. But worse than their physical capabilities was their psychology. Humans were pack-bonding predators who could form emotional attachments to anything, from their own species to alien races to their machines, to even the planets they conquered. They fought with a ferocity born of love rather than hate, which made them utterly unpredictable. A human might spare an enemy who showed kindness to their pet, then annihilate an entire fleet for harming a single child. The galaxy had tried to integrate them. It had failed spectacularly. We cannot simply ignore this, Verimuth said, her glow pulsing with authority. The quarantine was not a punishment. It was a mutual agreement reached after the Treaty of Proxima. Humanity recognized that their presence in the galaxy created instability. They chose to withdraw, to develop in isolation, until they had achieved sufficient social maturity. The quarantine field was meant to last 1,000 years, giving them time to evolve beyond their more destructive impulses. They've had 300 years, said Ambassador Felora of the Peaceful Collective, her song speech carrying notes of concern. That is not enough time for a species to fundamentally change. They are still humans, still dangerous. Then perhaps, suggested a new voice, we should ask them what they want. The chamber fell silent again. The speaker was trade masters in all of the merchant guilds, a species known for their pragmatism and their willingness to deal with anyone who had something to trade. His eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement or might have been calculation. Ask them. Thurn's laugh was a harsh bark. Have you lost your neural patterns? The last time we asked humans anything, they responded by building a fleet of ships that could fold space inside out. When we objected to their expansion rate, they apologized and kept expanding. When we enforced trade restrictions, they simply started trading with species we'd quarantined for being too primitive. They broke every rule we had, and they did it with smiles and handshakes and sincere apologies. Exactly, Zinal said smoothly. Which is why we should talk to them before they decide to come talk to us. The wisdom in those words settled over the chamber like a cold fog. Everyone present knew the stories. Humanity hadn't expanded through conquest. They had expanded through diplomacy, trade, and an infuriating tendency to help species in need. They had shared their technology freely, defended the weak, and generally behaved like model galactic citizens right up until you tried to control them. Then they became nightmares. The contact wars had started when the Kasadi Empire, at the height of its power, had demanded that humanity cease all expansion and submit to imperial oversight. Humanity had politely declined. The Kasadi had sent a fleet to enforce compliance. That fleet had never returned. Neither had the 3 fleets sent after it. By the time the war ended, the Kasadi Empire had been reduced to a fraction of its former size, and humanity controlled more territory than any single species in galactic history. And they had done it in 12 years. We should send a delegation, Krell'ix heard himself say. The words came out before he could stop them, and he immediately regretted speaking. Every optical sensor in the room swiveled toward him. Explain, Veramuth commanded. Krell'ix steadied his breathing spiracles. The quarantine field did not fail from external tampering. Our sensors show it collapsed from within. The humans shut it down. That means they have been capable of leaving for some time, but chose not to. The fact that they have now chosen to deactivate the field suggests they want to communicate. If we respond with hostility or attempts to re-establish containment, we will start another war. A war we cannot win. Cannot win? Thurn bristled. The galaxy has advanced considerably in 3 centuries. We have weapons that would kill billions of humans before they killed trillions of us. Krell'ix interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. War leader, I respect your people's martial traditions, but you did not study the humans as I have. My family has maintained the historical archives of the contact wars. I have read every report, analyzed every battle, interviewed every survivor, and I have reached one inescapable conclusion. We survived humanity not because we defeated them, but because they chose to let us. The chamber erupted again, but Veramuth's glow cut through the noise. Elaborate, Ambassador. Krell'ix activated his own holographic display, showing a tactical map of the final battle of the contact wars, the Battle of the Shattered Ring. Humanity's 3rd fleet versus the combined armadas of 18 species. 300,000 ships against 2,000 human vessels. By every tactical analysis, humanity should have been annihilated. Instead, they won. But look at this data carefully. He highlighted specific portions of the battle. The human fleet had clear shots at multiple command vessels. They didn't take them. They disabled engines rather than destroying ships. They created evacuation corridors in the middle of combat. Their victory was surgical, precise, designed to end the war with minimal loss of life on both sides. They could have exterminated every species they fought. They chose not to, so we should be grateful they showed mercy. Felora asked, her song taking on an edge. No, Krell'ix said quietly. We should be grateful that when we approached them afterward, when we offered the Treaty of Proxima, they accepted. They withdrew not because we forced them, but because we asked them. They understood that their presence created fear, and they valued galactic peace more than their own expansion. That is not the behavior of monsters, war leader. That is the behavior of people who were willing to sacrifice their own freedom for the greater good. Thurn's scales rippled with conflicting emotions. And if they have changed their minds, if they have spent 3 centuries preparing for conquest, then we will face it when it comes, Remembrance said, her glow brightening with decision. But Ambassador Krell'ix is correct. We must send a delegation. We must talk to them. And we must do so before fear drives us to actions we cannot take back. She paused, her energy field pulsing with something that might have been resignation or might have been courage. I am calling for a vote. All in favor of sending a diplomatic delegation to the Sol system to establish contact with humanity. The vote was far from unanimous, but it passed. 243 species voted in favor. 157 abstained. Only the Kasadi Empire voted against. The motion carries, Remembrance announced. Now we must decide who will go. This delegation will face humanity for the first time in 3 centuries. They will set the tone for all future relations. Volunteers, silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The bravest warriors in the galaxy suddenly found their manipulators very interesting to look at. Krell'ix felt his heart sinking. They were already failing. Humanity would see this hesitation as fear, as weakness. And humans responded to weakness with something worse than contempt. They responded with pity. They would try to help. I will go, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Rememrance's glow focused on him. You volunteer to lead this delegation, Ambassador Krell'ix of the Voth hierarchy? I do. He straightened his thorax, projecting more confidence than he possessed. My family has studied humanity for 3 centuries. I have maintained the archives, preserved the records, kept the memory of contact alive when others chose to forget. If anyone should face them now, it should be someone who understands what we lost when we quarantined them, and what we might regain if we do this correctly. Your courage is noted, Remembrance said, but you cannot go alone. We need a delegation that represents the diversity of the Galactic Council. Others must volunteer. Slowly, reluctantly, others stepped forward. Zinal of the Merchant Guilds, seeing opportunity even in danger. Scalaprime Elisa, whose scientific curiosity outweighed her fear. Medical Officer Venter of the Healing Synthesis, who had spent his life studying xenobiology and wanted to see the most fascinating species in the galaxy firsthand. Even Ambassador Fellora volunteered, though her song carried notes of terror. To everyone's surprise, War Leader Thurn stepped forward. I will accompany this delegation, he announced, not because I trust humanity, but because someone must be present who remembers what they are capable of, someone who will not be blinded by hope or curiosity. When facing the greatest predators the galaxy has ever known, Remembrance accepted his inclusion with a gracious pulse of light. Then it is decided. The delegation will depart immediately. You will travel to the Sol system. You will make contact with humanity, and you will determine whether the galaxy has a future that includes them, or whether we must prepare for war. As the council chamber began to empty, Krell'ix found himself standing alone at the podium, staring at the holographic display of Earth, that small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the birthplace of beauty and horror, of poetry and warfare, of impossible courage and unfathomable stubbornness. You look like a man contemplating his own death, said a voice beside him. Zinal had remained, his fur eyes glittering with that eternal calculation. I am contemplating the galaxy's future, Krell'ix replied. And yes, my death may be part of it. Humans don't kill diplomats, Zinal said. It's one of their peculiar moral codes. They'll talk to anyone, even their worst enemies. It's one of the things that made them so dangerous. You can't fight someone who keeps trying to understand you. That's what worries me. Krell'ix admitted. Not that they'll kill us, but that they'll welcome us. That they'll be exactly as we remember them. Friendly, helpful, generous, and completely unstoppable once they've decided on a course of action. We quarantined them because we were afraid of their violence, but their kindness was always the more dangerous weapon. Zinal's laugh was a chirping sound. Then perhaps we deserve whatever happens next. Come, Ambassador. We have a journey to prepare for, and I suggest you practice your human greetings. I believe they involve pressing manipulators together and showing their teeth. It's meant to be friendly. Showing teeth is a threat display in most species, Krell'ix muttered. Exactly, Zinal said, already walking away. That's why they're so terrifying. The Delegation's ship was a marvel of galactic engineering, a neutral vessel designed to carry representatives of 100 different species. In their preferred environments, Krell'ix stood in the observation deck, watching the stars shift as they entered faster-than-light travel. Beside him, Scala Prime Elisa manipulated holographic displays showing everything known about human space. The Sol system should have changed significantly, she said, her tentacles dancing through the data. 300 years is enough time for significant technological advancement. Based on their previous development rate, they should have colonized every planet, moon, and asteroid in their system. They may have built megastructures, Dyson spheres, orbital habitats housing trillions, or they may have destroyed themselves. Thurn said from behind them. The war leader had spent most of the journey in the weapons testing facility, running simulations. 3 centuries of isolation with a species as violent as humanity could have resulted in civil war, nuclear extinction, or social collapse. Humans are violent. Yes, Medical Officer Venter said gently, but they are also remarkably resilient. They evolved on a death world, war leader. Their planet tried to kill them with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and temperature extremes that would devastate most species. And they didn't just survive. They thrived. They turned their world into a garden. I doubt 3 centuries of isolation would break them, unless they broke each other. Thurn countered. The debate continued, but Krell'ix barely listened. His attention was fixed on the viewport, watching the stars stream past. They were 2 days from the Sol system now. 2 days from answers. 2 days from potentially the most important first contact in galactic history. His communicator chimed. Ambassador, you need to see this. It was the ship's sensor officer, a crystalline named Harmonios Dugtax. Krell'ix made his way to the bridge, the rest of the delegation following. The main display showed long-range sensor readings of the Sol system, and what they revealed made his breathing spiracles clench. That's impossible, Elisa breathed. The entire Sol system was transformed, not just colonized, but fundamentally restructured. Mercury had been converted into what appeared to be a massive computing facility, its entire surface covered in structures that pulsed with energy. Venus, once a hellscape of sulfuric acid and crushing pressure, showed signs of active terraforming. Mars was green, its surface dotted with cities and forests. The asteroid belt had been organized into orbital habitats, hundreds of thousands of them, arranged in patterns of impossible complexity. But Earth was exactly as it had been 300 years ago. The same continents, the same oceans, the same atmosphere, as if time had stood still. How is this possible? Venter asked. To leave their home world unchanged while transforming everything else? Why? Because it's home, Krell'ix said quietly. They changed everything else so they wouldn't have to change Earth. They loved it too much to alter it. That's insane, Thurn said. Any reasonable species would have used their home world as the foundation for expansion. Humans aren't reasonable, Zinal reminded him. That's why we quarantined them. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life. Everyone on the bridge froze. Unidentified vessel. This is Sol system traffic control. We've been monitoring your approach. We know who you are and why you're here. Welcome back to human space. Please transmit your diplomatic credentials and proceed to the designated coordinates. And the voice paused, and when it resumed, there was audible emotion in it. Thank you for coming. We've waited a long time for this day. The voice signed off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. They knew we were coming, Felora sang, her notes trembling. How did they know? Because they've been watching the entire time, Elisa said, her tentacles forming equations. The quarantine field was one way. We could monitor them, but we assumed they couldn't monitor us. What if we were wrong? What if they've spent 3 centuries observing the galaxy, learning everything about every species, preparing for the day we returned? Then they know everything about us, Thurn said grimly. Our strengths, our weaknesses, our fears, or, Krell'ix countered. They've spent 3 centuries hoping we would come back. That voice didn't sound threatening, war leader. It sounded grateful, maybe even emotional. Emotions can be faked, not by humans, Medical Officer Venter said. I've studied their biology extensively. Humans have enormous difficulty suppressing their emotions, especially strong ones. Their vocal patterns, body language, and chemical signals betray them constantly. If that transmission carried genuine emotion, it's because the speaker genuinely felt it. The coordinates provided by traffic control led them to a space station orbiting Earth's moon. As they approached, Krell'ix realized the station was new, constructed within the last few months. It had been built specifically for this meeting. The implications made his mind race. Humanity had known the quarantine would fail. They had known exactly when. They had prepared for this moment. The question was, what else had they prepared? As the delegation's ship docked with the station, Krell'ix noticed something that made his blood run cold. The station's design incorporated architectural elements from over 100 different galactic species, including several that had gone extinct during the contact wars. It was a monument, a memorial, and a message all at once. And standing in the reception bay, visible through the transparent docking tunnel, was a group of figures, humans. They were waiting, and they were smiling. The docking clamps engaged with a pneumatic hiss that sounded far too loud in the silence of the delegation's ship. Krell'ix stood at the airlock, his 6 manipulator arms arranging and rearranging his diplomatic sash in a nervous pattern he couldn't control. Behind him, the rest of the delegation prepared themselves in their own ways. Thurn checked his ceremonial weapons for the 4th time. Alyssa ran probability calculations through her neural network. Venter adjusted his medical scanner, claiming he wanted to collect baseline human biometric data, but clearly seeking comfort in familiar equipment. Fellora sang a prayer song so quietly her translator didn't bother rendering it. Zinal alone seemed unbothered, all for eyes glittering with anticipation. Remember, Krell'ix said, his voice steadier than he felt, humanity values directness and honesty. They appreciate eye contact, though do not stare, as it can be interpreted as aggression. They will likely offer to shake hands, which involves grasping manipulators. It is a gesture of trust and goodwill. Accept it, unless they're planning to pull you off balance and strike. Thurn muttered. If humanity wanted us dead, war leader, we would already be dead. Alyssa pointed out. Their weapons technology 3 centuries ago could have vaporized this ship from half a star system away. If they've continued to advance, she didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone aboard understood the mathematics of their situation. They were completely at humanity's mercy. The airlock light turned green. The door slid open. The reception bay beyond was breathtaking. The walls were transparent aluminum, providing an unobstructed view of Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel against the darkness. But it was the room's decoration that made Krell'ix's breathing spiracles flutter. Every surface bore artwork, sculptures, and architectural elements from hundreds of different galactic species. He recognized a Voth crystal weaving pattern, a Cassati honor wall, a crystalline resonance chamber, even a memorial grove designed for the methane breathers of Typhon 9. And there, in the center of it all, stood 5 humans. Krell'ix had studied thousands of hours of human recordings, but nothing prepared him for the reality of seeing them in person. They were smaller than he expected, these legendary warriors and diplomats. The tallest stood perhaps 2 meters, the shortest barely 1.5. Their faces were mobile and expressive, cycling through micro-expressions too quickly for his neural processors to fully catalog. They wore simple clothing in blues and grays, formal but not military, and they were smiling, showing their teeth in that peculiar threat display that made them so unsettling. 2 other species, the human in the center, stepped forward. An older female with silver threading through her dark hair and lines around her eyes that suggested a lifetime of those smiles. Ambassador Krell'ix of the Voth hierarchy, she said, her voice warm and carrying genuine emotion. War leader Thurn of the Cassati Empire, Scholar Prime Alyssa, Medical Officer Venter, Ambassador Fellora, Trade Master Zinal, welcome. Welcome home to the cradle of humanity. I am Director Sarah Chen of the Department of Galactic Relations. On behalf of all humanity, thank you for coming. She extended her hand toward Krell'ix, palm open, fingers relaxed. The classic human greeting. He reached out with his primary manipulator and grasped it carefully. Her grip was firm but not crushing, warm but not clammy. She shook exactly 3 times, then released, Director Chen, Krell'ix said, his translator rendering his clicks into standard galactic. Thank you for receiving us. We come on behalf of the Galactic Council to discuss the dissolution of the quarantine and the future of human-galactic relations. We know, Chen said gently. We've been watching. We know about the emergency session, the debates, the vote count. We know how frightened everyone is. And we understand why. She gestured to the walls around them. This station is called Remembrance. Every species represented here is one we fought during the contact wars. Some survived. Some didn't. We built this place to ensure we never forget the cost of our presence in the galaxy. Thurn stepped forward, his scales shifting to an aggressive red. You've been monitoring us. For 3 centuries, you've been spying on the galaxy while hiding behind your quarantine field. Yes, Chen said simply, not flinching from his anger. The quarantine was one way by galactic design, but not by physical limitation. We could have made it truly isolating, but we chose not to. We needed to know if the galaxy changed, if the fear lessened, if there might come a time when we could try again. We watched, we listened, we learned, and we waited. Waited for what? Fellora asked, her song carrying notes of suspicion. For you, said another human, a younger male with dark skin and kind eyes. He stepped forward and introduced himself as Dr. James Okafor, head of the Department of Xenopsychology. For someone to be brave enough to come talk to us when the quarantine failed. We've had the capability to shut it down for 150 years, but we didn't, because we knew that if we left of our own accord, it would be seen as aggression. We needed you to come to us. We needed you to choose dialogue. You could have sent a message, Elisa said, her tentacles forming skeptical patterns. You could have communicated your intentions before shutting down the quarantine. Would you have believed us? Chen asked quietly. Would the Council have accepted any message we sent as genuine? Or would they have assumed it was deception? The only way to prove our intentions was to create a situation where you had to respond, and then wait to see how you responded. You chose diplomacy. That tells us everything we needed to know about whether the galaxy is ready for us to return. The implications of that statement settled over the delegation like a weight. Humanity hadn't just been passive observers. They had been running a test. The entire galaxy had been under evaluation for 3 centuries, and they had only now passed. That's incredibly arrogant, Thurn growled. Yes, Chen agreed, smiling sadly. It is. We're aware of that flaw. Self-awareness doesn't always lead to self-improvement with us, I'm afraid. But we learned something during our isolation war leader. We learned that we can't change what we are. We're aggressive, expansionist, pack-bonding predators with impulse control problems and a pathological need to help things. But we can choose how we express those traits. We can choose restraint. The quarantine taught us that. Your soul system suggests otherwise, Elisa said, gesturing to the viewport and the transformed planets beyond. You've engaged in megascale engineering. You've restructured your entire star system. That level of industrial capacity could support a war fleet. That would dwarf anything the galaxy has ever seen. It could, agreed a third human, a woman with red hair and the weathered look of someone who spent time in harsh environments. She introduced herself as Admiral Rachel Torres, Strategic Defense Command. We have 17 billion people in the Sol system now. Our industrial capacity is approximately 8,000 times what it was when we accepted the quarantine. We have technology that would seem like magic to the species we fought 300 years ago. We could, theoretically, conquer a significant portion of the galaxy. She paused, letting that sink in. Thurn's hand moved toward his ceremonial weapon before he stopped himself. But we won't. Torres continued, because we spent 300 years learning a very important lesson. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Every human child now grows up learning about the contact wars, about the species that went extinct because they got caught in the crossfire of conflicts we didn't start but couldn't walk away from, about the civilizations that collapsed because our economic expansion destabilized their markets, about the cultures that vanished because our presence was too overwhelming. We teach them that power without restraint isn't strength, it's a disease. Pretty words, Thurn said. But words are wind. How do we know you mean any of this? You don't, Chen said bluntly. That's the problem, isn't it? That's always been the problem. Humans are good at sincerity. We're good at making people believe us. It's one of our most dangerous traits. So I'm not going to try to convince you with words. Instead, I'm going to show you what we've been doing for 300 years, she gestured, and the walls of the reception bay transformed into holographic displays. Images flooded the space around them. Krell'ix felt his mind struggling to process the sheer volume of information. This is the human archive, Chen explained, a complete record of every moment of human activity within the Sol system. For the past 3 centuries, every communication, every decision, every debate, every success and failure. We're giving you access to all of it. No restrictions, no redactions, complete transparency. That's Elisa's tentacles froze in mid-calculation. That's an impossible amount of data. Centuries of information from billions of individuals. 17 billion individuals across 9 planets, 400 major habitats, and countless smaller installations, Dr. Okafor confirmed. Approximately 6.3 billion exabytes of data, indexed and searchable. We're providing you with quantum storage devices that will allow your ships to carry copies. Every member of the Galactic Council will receive one. You'll be able to verify everything we tell you. Why? Venter asked, his medical scanner forgotten in his manipulators. Why would you make yourselves so vulnerable? This data could be used to identify weaknesses, plan attacks, exploit your society. Because trust has to start somewhere, Chen said simply. For 300 years, the galaxy has been terrified of us based on memories and incomplete information. We want you to see us as we really are. The good, the bad, and the embarrassing. Yes, this makes us vulnerable. But vulnerability is the price of trust. Zinal had been silent throughout the exchange. But now he spoke, his voice thoughtful. You said you watched us. What exactly did you learn? A 5th human stepped forward, younger than the others, with sharp eyes and nervous energy. I'm Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, head of Galactic Sociological Studies. We learned that the galaxy has changed significantly since the quarantine began. 47 new species have achieved interstellar travel. 12 minor conflicts have been resolved through council mediation. Trade has increased 700%. The Kasadi Empire has reformed its government structure twice, moving toward more democratic institutions. Thurn's scales rippled with surprise. You've been tracking our internal politics? We've been tracking everything, Yamamoto admitted. We know about the crystalline reproduction crisis and how the council helped resolve it. We know about the methane breather colony that was saved by Voth engineering. We know about the Trade Masters Guild reformation that prevented economic collapse. In the outer sectors, we've watched the galaxy become better, more cooperative, more peaceful. And it made us realize something important. He paused, looking directly at each member of the delegation in turn. You don't need us. The galaxy is functioning better without humanity than it ever did with us. We were a destabilizing element. Our removal created space for other species to grow, to lead, to build the kind of cooperative civilization we always disrupted with our presence. That's why we waited so long to shut down the quarantine, even after we had the capability. We weren't sure if coming back was the right choice. Then why did you? Krell'ix asked quietly. Chen smiled, and this time there was sadness in it. Because isolation is a form of death. Because 17 billion humans have been born during the quarantine, and they deserve the chance to see the galaxy their ancestors gave up. Because we believe we've learned enough to be better neighbors this time. And because, she gestured to the artwork surrounding them, to the memorial elements from species both living and extinct, because we owe it to everyone who suffered during the contact wars to at least try to do better. Show us, Elisa said suddenly. Not data, not records. Show us your society. Let us see how you live, how you've changed. Words and data can be manipulated. But if you truly believe you've learned restraint, let us observe it firsthand. Chen's smile widened. We were hoping you'd ask. Would you like a tour? The next 3 days were the most extraordinary of Krell'ix's life. The delegation was given unlimited access to human society, accompanied by guides but never restricted. They visited the manufacturing complexes on Mercury, where humans worked alongside AI systems of staggering sophistication to produce technological marvels. They saw the terraforming operations on Venus, where engineers were carefully crafting an ecosystem from scratch, using principles borrowed from 200 different galactic biospheres. They toured the cities of Mars, where humans had built vertical gardens that stretched kilometers into the sky and burrowed deep into the planet's crust. They visited the asteroid habitats, each one a unique experiment in human creativity and adaptation. Some were traditional city spaces with artificial gravity and Earth-like environments. Others were bizarre and wonderful, designed for zero-gravity living, or for human populations that had chosen to genetically modify themselves for life in extreme environments. But it was Earth that affected Krell'ix most deeply. They landed in a city called San Francisco, on the western coast of the North American continent. The city was old by human standards, its history stretching back centuries before humanity even achieved spaceflight. And it was beautiful. The delegation walked through streets filled with humans going about their daily lives, pausing to stare at the alien visitors with curiosity rather than fear. "This is what you protected," Krell'ix said to Chen as they stood on a hillside overlooking the city and the bay beyond. "When you transformed your entire system, but left Earth unchanged. This is why." "Yes," Chen said softly. "Earth is our mother, our home, the place where we became what we are. We colonized the solar system, built cities on dead worlds, created habitats in the void. But we couldn't bring ourselves to fundamentally alter Earth. We learned to live lightly here, to expand outward rather than consume what we love most. It was, in some ways, our first real lesson in restraint." A group of human children ran past, laughing and chasing each other with the boundless energy of youth. One of them tripped and fell, scraping her knee. Before Krell'ix could process what was happening, Venter was there, his medical scanner already analyzing the minor injury. "It's not serious," Venter said gently to the crying child. "Just a small abrasion. May I treat it?" The child looked up at the alien medical officer with wide eyes, then nodded. Venter applied a healing gel, and within moments the crying stopped. The child smiled, said something in a human language Krell'ix's translator didn't catch, and ran off to rejoin her friends. "You didn't have to do that," Chen said. "She was injured." Venter replied, confused. "I'm a medical officer. How could I not help?" Chen's expression was unreadable. "Do you understand now? That's what made us so dangerous. That's what we do. We see something in need of help, and we help it. It doesn't matter if it's logical or strategic. It doesn't matter if helping creates complications. We see the crying child, and we respond. We can't seem to help ourselves, and you see that as a flaw." Venter asked. "The galaxy did," Chen said. "During the contact wars, we intervened in conflicts that weren't ours to resolve. We defended species that other species had declared enemies. We formed attachments and alliances based on emotion rather than logic. We helped the crying children of the galaxy, even when those children were adults of species that wanted us gone. That's why we were so destabilizing. We couldn't be predicted or controlled because we operated on principles that seemed irrational to everyone else, except they weren't irrational," Fellora sang softly. "They were compassionate. I've been reviewing the historical records you provided. The species you helped during the contact wars, the ones you defended despite the strategic cost. Most of them survived. Many of them are thriving now. The ones you fought against, you went out of your way to minimize casualties and preserve their cultures, even the extinct species. Their extinction came from their own actions or from collateral damage you tried desperately to prevent. You weren't monsters. You were trying to be heroes, and the galaxy punished you for it. The galaxy was terrified of us." Chen corrected gently. "With good reason. Our compassion was weaponized by our capability. When a species that can fold space inside out and weaponize stellar radiation decides to help you, whether you want help or not, that's terrifying. We understand that now. We learned to ask first, to respect boundaries, to recognize that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is nothing at all." They returned to the Remembrance station on the fourth day. The delegation gathered in a conference room, designed to accommodate multiple species' environmental needs. The transparent walls showed Earth in the distance, a reminder of what humanity had chosen to preserve. "We need to make a report to the Galactic Council," Krell'ix said. "We need to tell them what we've seen and learned. But first, we need to understand your intentions. What do you want, Director Chen? What does humanity want from the galaxy?" Chen folded her hands on the table, a very human gesture of contemplation. "We want to come home. We want to rejoin the galactic community. We want to trade, to share technology, to learn from other species as we once did. But we understand that trust must be rebuilt. We're not asking for our previous status or territories. We're not demanding anything. We're asking for a chance to prove that we can be good neighbors." "How?" Thurn demanded. "How do you prove something like that? How does the galaxy know you won't simply resume your expansion, your interference, your destabilization?" "We've been developing a proposal for the past 50 years, Dr. Okafor said. Activating a holographic display, a framework for human reintegration that includes oversight, restrictions, and verification measures. We call it the Graduated Restoration Protocol." The display showed a timeline stretching across decades. Phase 1, limited contact. We send ambassadors to the Council, establish communication channels, begin small-scale trade agreements. Human ships can travel through galactic space, but cannot colonize new systems. Duration, 20 years. Phase 2, supervised expansion. Humans can establish colonies, but only in systems approved by the Council and with Council observers present. We share our technology openly and accept galactic standards for industrial development. Duration, 50 years. Phase 3, full restoration. If we successfully complete the first 2 phases without incident, humanity regains full membership in the galactic community, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Elisa's tentacles formed rapid calculations. 70 years total, nearly 3 generations for most galactic species. Long enough to establish patterns of behavior that can't be faked. "Exactly," Chen said. "We're not asking for trust we haven't earned. We're asking for the opportunity to earn it, slowly and under observation. If at any point we violate the terms of the protocol, we agree to return to Seoul and accept whatever restrictions the Council deems necessary, including, if necessary, a new quarantine." The room fell silent. Krell'ix looked at his fellow delegates, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their postures and expressions. This was unprecedented. A species volunteering for restrictions, accepting oversight, offering to prove themselves over human lifetimes. "You would really accept this?" he asked quietly. "Your people would agree to these limitations?" "We've already voted on it," Admiral Torres said. 17 billion humans participated in the referendum. 83% approved the protocol. The remaining 17% believe we should remain isolated permanently. No one, and I mean no one, voted for unrestricted expansion. "We remember the cost too well. I will recommend to the Council that we accept your proposal," Krell'ix said slowly. "I cannot guarantee they will agree, but I believe they will. What you've shown us, what you're offering, it demonstrates exactly the kind of growth and maturity we hoped the quarantine would foster." "I will oppose this," Thurn said. But his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "The Kasadi Empire will never trust humanity. Our history is written in too much blood." "We understand," Chen said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "We don't expect the Kasadi to forgive us, war leader. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're asking for a chance to be better than we were. If the Empire chooses to avoid contact with humanity, we'll respect that. We won't force our presence on anyone." Thurn's scales rippled through several colors before settling on a thoughtful gray. "You've changed. I don't know if I trust it, but you've changed. We had 300 years and nothing but our own mistakes to think about," Dr. Yamamoto said. "Change was inevitable. The question was whether we'd change for better or worse. We chose better, or at least, we tried to choose better. We're still human. We'll still make mistakes, but we're committed to making new mistakes instead of repeating old ones." Zinal spoke for the first time in hours. "When can we expect your first ambassadors to arrive at the Council?" "We have a ship ready to depart within the week," Chen said. "Ambassador Michael Chavez will represent humanity. He spent his entire life studying the Galactic Council and preparing for this moment. He understands the delicacy of the situation. One ambassador. Fellora sang with surprise. Just one. We're starting small, Chen said with a slight smile. Baby steps. We don't want to overwhelm anyone. One ambassador, one ship, a small support staff. Let the galaxy get used to seeing humans again before we show up in large numbers. The delegation spent 2 more days on the Remembrance station, finalizing their reports and preparing the massive data archives humanity had provided. On the final evening, Chen invited them to a human tradition, a shared meal. They gathered in a dining room with walls of transparent aluminum showing Earth, and Luna in a slow dance below. The food was prepared to accommodate each species' biology, human chefs having consulted with Venter to ensure safety. As they ate, Chen told stories of the quarantine years, of the debates and struggles, of the gradual evolution of human society from restless expansion to patient development. We learned to be content, she said, gesturing to Earth below. That was the hardest lesson. Humans always want more. More space, more resources, more experiences, more everything. But we learned to find depth instead of breadth, to explore inward instead of outward. We've made more progress in art, philosophy, and science during the quarantine than we did in all our previous history, because we finally stopped running long enough to think, and now you want to run again. Thurn observed, though his tone was more curious than accusatory. Now we want to walk. Chen corrected, carefully, thoughtfully, with awareness of where we're stepping and who might be in our path. The galaxy is large enough for all of us, War Leader. We learned that too late last time. This time, we'll remember it from the start. As the evening drew to a close, Krell'ix found himself alone with Chen on the observation deck. Earth hung before them, beautiful and terrible in its tranquility. I'm afraid, he admitted, not of humanity as we feared before, but of what happens if this doesn't work. If your people can't maintain the restraint you've shown, if the galaxy can't accept your return, another war would destroy us all this time. I know, Chen said softly. We're afraid too, but fear shouldn't stop us from trying to be better. That's another lesson we learned. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite the fear. You chose to come here despite your terror of what you might find. That was courage. Now we're choosing to re-enter the galaxy despite our fear of repeating our mistakes. And the galaxy will choose whether to give us that chance despite their fear of what we might become. All of us are being brave together. That's a very human perspective, Krell'ix said. Yes, Chen agreed with a smile. But maybe it's not a bad one. Maybe that's something we can share with the galaxy. Not just our technology or our industrial capacity, but our willingness to be afraid and keep trying anyway. The delegation's ship departed the next morning. As they pulled away from the Remembrance station, Krell'ix watched Earth shrink in the viewport. The data archives sat securely in their ship's storage. Terabytes of information that would keep the Galactic Council busy for years. His report was written, his recommendations clear. He had done what he came to do, but more than that. He had witnessed something he had never expected to see. A predator species choosing to restrain itself. A civilization powerful enough to take what it wanted, instead asking permission. Humanity had learned to be patient, and in that patience lay the seed of something that might, just might, transform the galaxy. They meant every word, Venter said quietly beside him. My scanners monitored their stress levels, hormone fluctuations, and neural activity throughout our visit. Humans are terrible liars when they care about something, and they care about this deeply. Their sincerity was genuine. That's what I'm afraid of, Krell'ix murmured. Sincere humans are the most dangerous kind. When they believe in something, they make it real through sheer force of will, and they believe in their redemption. Then perhaps, Elisa suggested, we should believe in it too. The mathematics are clear, Ambassador. If humanity adheres to the protocol, galactic stability will increase significantly. Their technology alone could solve 17 current crises across known space. And if they fail, well, we'll be monitoring them closely enough to respond before damage becomes catastrophic. The Council will accept the protocol, Zinal predicted. The economic advantages alone will convince the merchant guilds, and where we lead, others follow. Humanity will walk among the stars again, Ambassador. The question is what kind of galaxy they'll find when they do. Krell'ix thought about that as the ship entered faster than light travel. What kind of galaxy indeed? One that had grown in humanity's absence, learned cooperation and peace without their destabilizing presence. One that was perhaps ready, finally, to welcome them back not as conquerors or threats, but as equals, war leader. He said, turning to Thurn, "Your people will oppose this. What will you tell them?" Thurn's scales had settled into a contemplative blue. "I will tell them the truth, that humanity has changed, that they offer restrictions and oversight, that they may still be dangerous, but they're dangerous in the way a fire is dangerous, destructive if uncontrolled, but invaluable if properly channeled. And I will tell them that the Kasadi Empire survived humanity once, because we were brave enough to face them. We will survive them again by being brave enough to give them a chance. You've changed your mind." Fellora sang with surprise. "I've accepted reality," Thurn corrected. "Humanity is returning whether we accept it or not. The only question is whether we meet them as enemies or as cautious allies. I choose allies, cautious ones." The journey back to the council chambers took 7 days. During that time, the delegation reviewed the archives, cross-referenced human claims with the data provided, and prepared their presentation. What they found only reinforced their conclusions. Humanity had been brutally honest in their data sharing. They had included records of crimes, of social unrest, of failed experiments and ethical debates. They had hidden nothing when they arrived at the council chambers. They found the entire galaxy waiting. Every species had sent representatives. Every communication channel carried the proceedings. The question of humanity's return had captured galactic attention in a way nothing had for centuries. Krell'ix stood at the central podium where he had stood weeks before to announce the quarantine's failure. But this time, he felt no dread. Instead, he felt something that might have been hope. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice steady and clear. "We have returned from the Sol system. We have met with humanity. We have observed their society, reviewed their records, and evaluated their proposal for reintegration. And I stand before you today to recommend that we accept their graduated restoration protocol and welcome humanity back into the galactic community." The chamber erupted, but this time the chaos was different. It was excitement, fear, curiosity, and hope all mixed together. The sound of a galaxy facing change. High Counselor Verimuth raised her luminescence, calling for order. "The delegation will present their findings. The council will hear all evidence before voting. Ambassador Krell'ix, proceed." He proceeded. For 3 hours, the delegation presented everything they had learned. They showed recordings of human cities, of the children playing in San Francisco streets, of the memorial architecture in the Remembrance station. They shared the data archives, the graduated restoration protocol, the referendum results. They spoke of human sincerity, human fear, human hope. And when they finished, the council voted. It took 18 hours of debate, but in the end, the result was clear. 311 species voted to accept the protocol. 63 voted against. 26 abstained. Humanity would walk among the stars again. 3 months later, Ambassador Michael Chavez stood in the council chambers, taking the oath of office that made him humanity's official representative. He was younger than Krell'ix expected, barely 40 years old by human standards, with dark eyes that held equal parts determination and humility. "Thank you," Chavez said simply after the ceremony concluded. "On behalf of humanity, thank you for giving us this chance. We won't waste it." Krell'ix approached him after the formal proceedings ended. "No pressure, Ambassador, but you carry the hopes of 17 billion humans and the fears of 400 galactic species. How does that feel?" Chavez laughed, a warm sound that seemed to ease the tension in the room. "Terrifying. Exactly as it should be. The moment I stop being afraid of failing is the moment I probably will fail. Fear keeps us honest. My grandmother taught me that. Wise grandmother, she was. She also taught me that being human means screwing up constantly, but having the courage to say sorry and try to do better. I'm going to screw up, Ambassador Krell'ix, probably within my first week here. But I promise you this, I'll own my mistakes, I'll learn from them, and I'll never stop trying to do right by both my people and yours." That, Krell'ix said, extending his primary manipulator for a handshake, is all anyone can ask. As they shook hands, Krell'ix reflected on how much had changed in so short a time. The galaxy that had lived in fear of humanity for 3 centuries was now cautiously embracing them. It would be a long road, 70 years of careful steps and monitored progress. There would be setbacks, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt, but for the first time in his life, Krell'ix believed that the galaxy and humanity could find a way forward together, not because humans had become something other than what they were, but because they had learned to channel what they were into something constructive. The quarantine had failed, but perhaps in failing, it had succeeded. It had given humanity time to grow, and it had given the galaxy time to prepare. And now, as humans walked among the stars again, they did so not as conquerors or threats, but as partners in a grand experiment. The experiment called coexistence, the experiment called hope. 50 years after humanity's return to the galactic community, Ambassador Krell'ix retired stood in the Remembrance station, now a historical landmark and museum. He was old by Voth standards, his carapace showing the cracks and discoloration of advanced age. But his minds were still sharp, and his memories were clear. A young human approached him, a student by her clothing. "Sir, are you Ambassador Krell'ix, the one who led the first delegation?" "I am," he confirmed. What was it like, meeting humanity after the quarantine? Krell'ix thought about that question, about the fear he had felt, the wonder he had experienced, the hope that had surprised him, about watching humanity carefully navigate their return, making mistakes but owning them, learning and growing, and slowly, gradually, earning the galaxy's trust. It was like watching a storm return to the ocean, he said finally. Powerful, potentially dangerous, but ultimately belonging to something larger than itself. Humanity was always meant to be among the stars. The quarantine was never going to last forever. All we did was survive long enough to welcome them back when they were ready. And when we were ready to, the student smiled and thanked him before moving on. Krell'ix turned back to the viewport, looking down at Earth, the planet that had produced a species the galaxy had feared, quarantined, and finally embraced. Humanity walked among the stars again, and the galaxy was better for it.